Now, at this time, I would like to move to the final agenda item number 5. This is a resolution supporting a person of color for Chief Justice appointment. With this measure, this resolution stresses that the Wilmington City Council is concerned with the lack of diversity within the Delaware State Supreme Court. Despite the continued growth of a diverse population within the state, especially the city of Wilmington, the largest city in Delaware,
I didn't know they were going to be leaving.
we accurately represented as Senator.
I got one more thing.
Excuse me, Mr. Hall.
Sorry, I didn't know they were going to be leaving. But there was one officer who comes from a university in this great state of Delaware who's working now for the city of Wilmington, who told me that the officers that gunned down Ricardo Hilton are back on duty. He told me this. I don't know what shift they're working, what rotation they're on, but they're back to work. That investigation is still going on, right?
Okay, sir,
that investigation is still going on.
This
Those officers should not be working.
Discuss an internal affairs investigation.
Those officers should not be working while this case is still active, while we still don't know why it is that they shot him. We don't have body cameras. We didn't have them on him, so they should not be working.
Understandable, Mr. Hall. Okay, so just finishing up with the Supreme Court. Therefore, the Council of City of Wilmington strongly encourages Governor Carney to appoint a person of color to the Delaware State Supreme Court to demonstrate equity, inclusion, and recognition of the diversity of the overall population of the city, state, and the Delaware legal profession. This resolution is, I am the prime sponsor of this resolution, and I encourage all of City Council to get behind this initiative. We are a very diverse state. In fact, over 37% of our population is a racial minority, and it's time for our Delaware Supreme Court to look like the citizens in which it serves. Diversity in Delaware courts in the legal profession has been a big problem. I know from experience as an attorney of color in the state, Delaware has a long way to go and lags behind many of our neighbors, namely Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland. All those states have significantly higher numbers of diverse attorneys. So with that, I encourage, this is a measure to stand behind our attorneys of color and our citizens of color, and encouraging the governor to do the right thing and appoint a highly qualified candidate of color. And with that, are there any questions or comments from the committee? Councilman Gott?
Yes, I spent most of my adult life fighting for equality and equity, and so I support the whole concept of us speaking up, because we're really the only level of government with a substantial number of black elected officials to be able to vote something like this into place. Maybe some of the other governments will do the same without having to be a majority black government. What I do want everybody to understand is that when the sponsor said folks got to be highly qualified, that's always language that I've always taken offense to. And so I'm sure he doesn't mean any harm, but I need to speak to why I've always taken offense to that. In Delaware, the process to become a judge is in the Constitution, and it says that the governor is able to pick somebody and submit their name to the Senate, and if the Senate approves that person, they are a judge. Every one of those people I just mentioned are politicians. As an African American, the use of the term highly qualified is language that folks have often used as a way of talking around us to somehow suggest that we as people of color don't come up to the standards of others. And I need to go on record that you can become a judge by the governor and the majority of the Senate saying you're a judge. It doesn't say anything about highly qualified. It says no such thing. The qualification is having been an attorney for 5 years. So we can all agree that we want people who are going to be successful as judges. But whenever criteria is thrown into a process involving people of color, the criteria becomes a hurdle that's designed for us not to be able to jump over, because the folks who control the system then assess who's highly qualified and who's not. But the people who control the process, they put in whoever they want to put in. It is a political process. They sell it to us as a merit-based process. It's not a merit-based process. I've been involved in the process, and I headed up the most successful effort for increasing minority judges in the history of the state of Delaware. It was called a program called Diversity in the Legal Community when I was the state president of NAACP and the regional chair, and even worked on national issues related to the Senate Judiciary Committee, etc. It's a political process. So what's beautiful now is that because of all of the efforts for there to be more minority lawyers and more women lawyers, folks can no longer say we can't find any candidates. They used to say we can't find any qualified candidates. That's why I take offense to it, because I was involved with the fight from the beginning, and I knew how to use coded language. But we got to kill the coded language because it feeds into our own oppression. If a person has been a lawyer for 5 years, they meet the requirements. And if the governor and the majority of the Senate say yay, you're a judge, and it doesn't matter what anybody else has to say. If that ain't political, nothing's political. So I needed to make that statement. Also, back when I was involved in getting more black judges put in place, I had an agreement with the people that I worked with, because what happens in America is when folks are pressured to put in diversity, then they try to get slick and they say, oh, okay, you want diversity? We're going to use this vacant slot and put in the guy that's on the Supreme Court now. Well, that's not the guy on the U.S. Supreme Court. He's not concerned about issues that the African American community is concerned about. They put him there because they said, okay, Thurgood Marshall's not here. We're going to put in somebody who don't care nothing about issues impacting the black community. So I always go on record, because I'm free to say so. I want diversity, but don't put no sellout on the Delaware Supreme Court and then look at us and say, yeah, we gave you what you asked for. So when I was involved, I had a working arrangement with the chair of the Judicial Nominating Commission. And the working agreement was, we're fighting on the outside for you to be able to bring some people in, but don't you go bringing in no clown people that's going to be disrespecting our community. So I hope that that's part of the conversation, because when we did it, that's how we did it. So if there's folks working on this, just tell them they need to see this, but don't bring us back no Clarence Thomas, because the community supports this, we're getting ready to support it, and we don't want no trick games going on. So that's all I have. I support. I'd like to be added as